Minister, can you provide an update on the student accommodation projects at advanced stages of planning that remain undeveloped due to the lack of agreement on government support? And I have to ask you, Minister, will you explain to us the students that are excluded from the tax credit, from the rent tax credit, because the Taoiseach was unable to do that today, and I want to get it clear once and for all what students are included. Why are other students excluded from it? People need clarity. We can't get the answers from revenue around that. Thank you.
Minister. I'm happy to come back on that issue and happy to engage with the Deputy. I mean, there needs to be absolute clarity on that, and I will. I'll come back on that, but I just want to deal with the student accommodation question that you've tabled to me first, because I am actively aware and indeed working to address the difficulties faced by students. And whilst I understand in your question where you talked about lack of agreement on government support, I mean, I would make the point, and I would have to, that this is the first time in the history of the state that the government has directly intervened. For better or worse, that is a statement of fact. It's the first time we're getting stuck in to part funding with taxpayers' money the building of student accommodation. And fundamentally, I do believe the challenge of student accommodation is one of housing supply more generally. Obviously, the outbreak and the war in Ukraine has compounded the impact of Brexit, COVID-19, cost of construction. We're all familiar with these things, and the higher cost of finance has also significantly contributed to the overall cost of new projects. A number of HEIs had to pause their student accommodation projects as a result of these challenges. So to assist in restarting the projects, on the 29th of November last year, I secured government approval to develop both short and medium-term policy responses to activate supply of affordable student accommodations. These landmark policies will see for the first time the state providing financial support for the construction of student accommodation. They'll ensure increased availability of and promote greater access to student accommodation. The short-term focus is on projects where planning permissions in place and designs are at an advanced stage. Government has approved funding support to develop accommodation for students in the University of Limerick, in Maynooth University and the University of Galway. These projects were not undeveloped due to a lack of agreement on government support. Rather, my proposal now enables these universities to reactivate projects that were stalled. So those three have been approved by government and need to get on with it. My department is also working with the Office of the Attorney General to address EU state aid requirements. As the Deputy will know well, there's two other universities that had active planning permissions and their projects have been paused. That is DCU and UCD. I have personally had 2 meetings with each of them in the course of the last month, and I expect to be able to update government on how I believe we can move forward on them very shortly. And I'm pleased to tell the Deputy that very recently Trinity College Dublin has also received planning approval for an accommodation project, and we're now engaging with that. So there's 6 I'm engaging with, 3 over the line in terms of funding as of November: DCU, UCD and Trinity. And in parallel, as the Deputy will know, we've allocated the €1 million to the technological universities to come up with their plans.
Deputy.
Thank you, Minister. This is vitally important that these projects are progressed sooner rather than later. I certainly welcome, and you know I pushed for a long time for public funding for accommodation because of it being integral to students participating in third level education, particularly students from rural areas. So I think that it's vitally important that I want to ask you specifically, how are you making sure that these beds are going to be affordable once they're available? That there's not just a number ring-fenced for Susie students or whoever, that they're all going to be affordable. I think that needs to be the bottom line where money is invested. But I am going to come back again, and I think my colleague here actually has one of the questions around the rent tax credit, because it's not good enough, Minister. The requirement for landlords to be registered with the RTB excludes so many, including students. Students are being punished because their landlord isn't registered with the RTB. So we need to tease that out in one of the other questions.
Minister.
Yeah, so look, I mean, the rent-a-room scheme is included in the tax, in the rent credit.
The rent-a-room? Oh,
so
yeah.
The rent-a-room is included.
Is included.
The on-college accommodation is included, and everyone else needs to be registered with the RTB. That's always been my understanding. I'm happy to clarify that with the Deputy and work through it with the Deputy. But that was certainly my understanding, but I'm very happy to say clarity that my understanding is correct, but that's always been my understanding in relation to the rent-a-room. Obviously, in relation to landlords more broadly, obviously they do need to be registered with the RTB for very good reasons, including the protection of tenants. And indeed, one of the issues the USI and others would raise with me would be the importance of an RTB registration point. But let me seek clarity on that and clarify that with the Deputy, and I'm happy to do that because obviously it's not within my direct department's remit. As the Deputy will know, and I do acknowledge that we we both support public investment here in getting these projects moving. As the Deputy will know, and I think I will have said on previous occasions, whatever funding we're investing, we expect that level of funding back in terms of percentage of rooms that will be charged below market rates. We're doing this to ensure we're in compliance with EU state rules, but also to make sure that if the state invests €1, the state is making sure that these things are going to be below market rent. Sorry.
Final supplementary. Deputy.
Yeah, I do want to, the affordability is crucial here, I think, in terms, because as you say, this is the first time that there's been public investment into student accommodation. We have to get it right from the beginning in order to meet the affordability criteria. There's no point in having student accommodation, indeed any other accommodation, rental accommodation, or whatever it might be, if it's going to be beyond the reach of ordinary, normal people here. So we have to get that right. And I just have to reiterate for you, and I just have to get it clear, because this is not what has been coming from revenue, in that those who are under the rent-to-room scheme, who obviously aren't registered with the RTB, that anybody who has made those payments will get a rent credit, will get a tax credit for that. I'm really glad that you've cleared that up this evening. There are a few other exclusions that we'll talk about a bit later on under one of the other questions. Thank you.
Minister.
The Deputy will know, and just in the interest of accuracy and oral PQs, I mean, the rent tax credit scheme is run by the Department of Finance, and so I'm offering information to be helpful as I know it to the House, as opposed to being accountable to the House for the administration of the rent tax credit scheme, which is done by the Revenue Commissioners. I agree with the Deputy in relation to affordability, but I also think there's a real focus on the issue of supply. We do know that even at current rates, on-campus accommodation is oversubscribed. From my memory, for every one bed that was rented in Maynooth on campus, there were 5 or 6 students who would have rented the bed. So I do see it as a twin track. It's supply, because there are clearly students, and I'm not saying it's easy, but there are clearly students renting existing accommodation on campus, and so we need more supply. But also we do need to make sure that the affordability is to the core, particularly of any public investment made by government.
Minister. We now move to the next question in the name of Deputy Thomas Pringle.
Minister, this question just is in relation to the Killybegs Tourism College campus of the ATU, and how you actually see the potential for it developing within the overall remit of the ATU, and whether any funding applications have been made specifically in relation to that as well, and just to have a general discussion on it. Thank you.
Thank Deputy Pringle, and acknowledge at the outset that this is an issue you raise with me on a regular basis, and I know the Killybegs campus is important to you and your community. The first thing I want to say before I get into reading the official answer is I am trying to establish, and expect to be in a position to establish very shortly, a regional campus support fund. We have a number of campuses that I genuinely believe, and I know you do too, are integrally important to regional access and local access to third level institutions. I would consider Killybegs to be very much in that category. Being quite frank, sometimes they can cost a bit more to run, but there's a public good in them continuing to be there, and we want to do that. At the moment, we have been doing it, but we've been doing it a little bit ad hoc in terms of sustainability. It would be better to get to a place where we just knew there was an annual regional campus support fund that certain institutions could draw down from and almost be guaranteed funding from. I expect to be in a position to make an announcement on that in the next couple of weeks, and I would, without preempting it, be surprised if Killybegs isn't in a position to benefit. The ATU Killybegs campus does play an important part in delivering on ATU's educational and innovation mission in Donegal and in the region, and it has played a particularly critical role in providing skills for the tourism sector. And I do understand from an update from ATU that there are plans to further develop its contribution to the food science discipline within the overall technological university. The campus also plays a critical role in the wider economic development of Killybegs and its wider region, and that is at the core of the TU's mission in general. The Enterprise Ireland funded Killybegs Marine Cluster has made significant progress since its establishment just two years ago. There is significant potential for the cluster to further support the development of the marine industry, with particular opportunities in the emerging wind and hydrogen sectors off the northwest coast of Ireland. ATU do see this as an area of major potential in the years ahead, and one that will engage the entire university's capacities across education, training, research and enterprise development. The campus in Killybegs is regarded by ATU, and indeed by my department, as a significant enabler to achieve this, in partnership with local industry, with Enterprise Ireland, with the Western Development Commission and other stakeholders. And I'm also aware that ATU is working closely with a range of partners to contribute to the development of Killybegs Town and Harbour, and a key area of engagement is the Ocean Innovation Centre, and I know the university is also working with Donegal County Council on plans for the refurbishment of Island House.